Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show tonight. We are meeting once again on this Tuesday evening because we've still got questions that need to be answered. We've still got some things to figure out. We are 9 days away from the NFL draft. We are 9 days away from figuring out what this team wants to build, how this team wants to approach building in this first year post Pete Carroll. So tonight we are going to be talking about the linebackers. We are going to be talking about the interior linebackers, the stack linebackers, whatever you want to call them. We're going to figure this out. I am joined by Brandon of the Hawks Nest. How are you doing tonight, Brandon?
I'm doing great. I loves me some inside linebackers, Brendan. It's always a fun position to evaluate.
Right. And I'll tell you, this is a position that we as Seahawks fans should really care about because we need them.
A lot of them.
Yeah. We may need more than one. We don't really have anything beyond the 2024 season. We've got a couple guys on 1-year deals who are pretty good, but after that, it's real thin. It gets thin real quick here.
Well, much like with John Schneider's tendency to double dip in the draft at times on positional groups that might look this way, Brendan, I'm expecting guard to be like this. I am also expecting linebacker to have a good potential of that, to your point, that you end up coming away with this draft. Don't know where they'll be taken, but you will come away with this draft with probably 2 linebackers because, to your point, you have a need for this, not just both in the short term or long term. Certainly, we've done a good job by going into free agency and getting the starters in place. You don't have to stretch for this, Brendan, but absolutely, this is something that they're going to want to address, especially to get guys that fit to what Macdonald's scheme does. I mean, that's another part of this a bit, is that his scheme really does require a lot from its linebackers.
Which is why it kind of surprised people that he didn't attack the position a little more aggressively in free agency. But there was only so much money to go around, and you always want to build through the draft, right? I think it's important to note that any football team wants to build through the draft. Free agency is the plan B. So it doesn't particularly surprise me, nor does it upset me. I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, don't you get a little bit nervous when it comes to spending money on linebackers and inside linebackers of that too, where it does feel a little bit more like it's not a guarantee we're going down that path with those guys when you put that money down on them, even if they're going into their prime. And I that's what I like, that pathway of going down the draft better because of that, because I think it's too much of a roll of the dice to pay him.
Right. I agree with that. I think that's true for almost anybody. Obviously, some positions more than others. I feel like that's kind of the case for anyone, though.
I do, but I mean, I think if it's like you go receiver and you get a middling receiver, well, he's giving you some production and catches out of that spot. But if you have a linebacker that you've gone out there and paid, like at that, as we're seeing with some of these guys getting like a, Tremaine Edmonds, 17 million per year kind of deal, and he's not even giving you near that, and your defense is really hoping here's our kind of supposed to be our kind of centerpiece on this defense or a linchpin on the defense, and it's not able to lean on that at all. Whereas like an offense can kind of overcome that to other places. And I think you could apply that to lines and defensive lines. But I think to me, it's just a little bit different with the inside linebacker because there's so much on their shoulders to do, number one, but also just in the nature of the beast of even just this defense, the skill set is more required. And therefore, if you don't hold up to it, the rest of the defense will fall with it. Kind of like how where the Ravens, weren't able to really get going forward until they brought Roquan Smith into the building. That was when, from their defensive standpoint, everything clicked in for them there with Mike Macdonald.
Right. I agree with all that. And that sets the stage for what we're going to talk about now, because no news. It's only been a few days. Not a lot's going on in Seahawks world. We're burning through the top 30 visits. Some interesting things, some not so interesting things. Cooper DeJean was in here recently. That's I think a very compelling one. That's a potential first rounder there. But overall, things are just kind of going along here. We're just waiting for things to play out.
He's not been talked a lot about, Brendan, and I know we'll be discussing him in the cornerback show where this will be addressed by us, but on Thursday. But Cooper DeJean is a guy that I think there is legitimate interest from the Seattle Seahawks. And when you're talking about that type of player that is asked to do many roles in college, to give you the confidence to believe that they'll be able to do the many roles at the pro level, this is the kind of guy that comes with that. He's got the safety skills. He's got the corner skills. They've asked him to play Sam linebacker down there in Iowa. So he's got a lot that he brings to the table. And that would be, I imagine, very appealing potentially to the Seattle Seahawks.
Absolutely. So, we'll talk about Cooper DeJean in a few days here, more
Mm,
in depth, but suffice to say, I like him a lot too. I am
yeah.
definitely, and I'm also aware of the fact that I think Mike Macdonald would have a lot of fun with him.
He would. The amount of, again, just you have these corners tending on teams to be okay. If you're in off coverage and you're going to have a high prevalence of playing bail drop and cover three, or you'll play press. And I know that there's a high chance you're playing probably man off that press look, depending on the team. And then so you have a quarterback who kind of fits to thinking these guys will just do this sort of thing on the field, that they fit to these type of pre-responsibilities, to the snap. But with this defense, it is one where, as we've talked about, these corners are asked to go all over the place. They might be asked to come down in and play a linebacker post snap, where they start from a position of outside corner and come to linebacker, start from a position of outside corner and go to safety. And that's what really does make this defense so very unique, is that just defenses don't do that. They don't ask their corners to do that kind of thing, or very, 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 very rarely. Whereas with this, it's almost every play somebody's doing something that goes outside of their normal skill set in order to disguise and confuse the offenses.
All right. So yeah, definitely glad we're in alignment on Cooper DeJean, because I know that's going to be especially if we draft him, that's going to be a controversial one. There's going to be some people who are a little bit confused, and we got to try to clarify things a little bit, I think.
I can understand the confusion on that one at first, but it is one that he requires the deep dive to understand him, and then fitting that into the defense and how that model really works in that understanding of it. Because if you want your defense to run, you've got to have the parts, especially if you're very specific in what you're requiring from those parts to make it go. It isn't just merely getting a good player. It's getting the player that fits to what I exactly want to do in this defense.
Absolutely. And this is a new regime. We got to give them freedom to build the way they want to build.
Amen.
Okay, so that gets us to inside linebacker. That gets us to the stack linebacker, the off-ball linebacker. And it's not a great class for that position, I don't think. I've seen worse, but I've also certainly seen better. It's not a position that is valued super heavily anymore anyway, if we're being honest. It has been a position that slowly has gotten devalued over the years, to where you at any given time will only see about 5 or 6 linebackers paid at the peak level, and then there's a big drop off. That being said, would you agree that there is not an off-ball linebacker in this class that is going to go in the first round?
Yes, 100%. I mean, it's 100% with the one caveat being that Brendan, if I was to say that there's like 6 guys in this draft, not blue chip, but just this guy's got like star potential, going beyond kind of blue chip. The guy that I wouldn't have had in my blue chip prospect group, but who does have that and who might kind of, fade the funk with a certain team to do this, is Payton Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one guy with what he's done in his testing and all that in the pre-draft, that if his medical's clear, I could see a team jumping for a guy like that where they just don't come down. And we'll talk about him, I know, but I don't think it'll happen. But I would say there's probably a 30% chance it could happen, because it's just, he is so kind of unique in how he is built.
Right. I agree with that. I can bite on that. There's actually one guy that I put in my top 32 when I made my big board in this group. I don't know if I think he should be a first rounder, but I think in this class he maybe should be, but I don't think he will be. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So most years you have at least one guy that goes in the first round. So we can call this class a little bit unremarkable, all things considered. But there are some good players here. There's definitely going to be some theme that resonates in the NFL. We just have to find it.
I think the place that stands out to this draft, the way you're presenting it, I think is accurate. I'd say maybe it's around kind of an average middle linebacker draft for what you normally see. Being, like you also said, this is just not one that is spits them out every single year. You just have a cacophony of them. But the thing I do like about this draft with the middle linebackers, Brendan, is you're right. Rounds 1, 2, 3, it's going to be kind of lean. There's not going to be a lot of guys you and I are going to be talking about here. But there was something about into that 4th round, early 5th roundish range where there's a nice little collection of guys in there. And, they're not perfect. They've got some blemishes to them, but they're also not 5th round guys necessarily, pure and simple. They're really pure 4th round guys where you're like, well, there's some starting potential. And then depending on what you ask of those guys in that 4th round and what they're bringing with their skill set, especially those guys that might be downhill blitzers, they're able to come in this defense and really succeed because it really suits to what they do best.
I can agree with that. I think the body is pretty good, but the head is there's not much of a head. There's some stuff that I like, but it's not a tremendous collection of talent up here at the top. There is one guy who I think stands out and is clearly the best linebacker in this class. And let's go ahead and lead off with him because I know that you appreciate him as well. It's Edgerrin Cooper of Texas A&M.
Yes,
when
sir.
I did my big board last night, my final big board, he did come in my top 32 barely. I couldn't find 32 guys I thought were better than him. I will acknowledge that. Do I think he'll go in the top 32? Not really. But I could kind of see it because I really like this guy. 6'2", 230 pounds, which in the modern NFL is fine. 34-inch arms. That's important for linebackers. They need to wrap up. Combine scores were pretty good all around. His 40 time was blazing fast. His verts were a little above average, or his jumps. What do you make of Edgerrin Cooper?
He's the full meal deal as far as your linebackers go, and the way that they're, like you say, not only the way they're built, but the skill set he brings, and that there's not really a huge necessarily area of weakness. He stands out to me of right there with Payton Wilson of having the most upside, I would say, of any linebacker in this draft. I think there's a couple of things still that got to kind of come along with him at times. But it's more of nitpicking than anything else. I would put my comp to him, Brendan, of Devin Lloyd, the kid that came out a couple of years ago. I think he's very similar. Edgerrin was the highest grade linebacker by PFF last year. He's really good at blitzing, excellent as a quarterback spy. I mean, that's thing that stands out to me, especially with all these mobile quarterbacks now, Brendan, is when Texas A&M would fit him to a spy role, he could do that thing where he drops into the spy and he's feeling the quarterback, and where normally those really fast quarterbacks can engage that sort of Jaden Daniels acceleration switch and they're by the linebacker, even if he seems to have an angle, he would get to them on that angle and be able to bring them down for a stop. And so the speed and quickness is not just a tested time with him. It's absolutely something that you see on the field. He flows fast to the play. He attacks. His dealing with second level blockers to me was a little bit of the part where I think he's going to need to come along and find a little bit at times better way. He shows potential with it where he's not just a dipper, but a guy that will come up and actually try to take the blockers on and then try to disengage them. I just felt like there were times he does get stuck in moments, but as far as that, I thought the only guy I like a little bit better is by just a smidge. The only thing I think he's missing that other guy has is just the awareness and instincts is a little more pure to the other guy. But some of that can come along, I think, with Edgerrin Cooper. And that's why I say, Brendan, I see him as a guy that has as much upside as any inside linebacker in this draft.
Right. I can agree with all that. He's a really good all-around player. And what a lot of people call it is like reactive speed, right? You have straight line speed, but then you have your ability to react to things quickly, like open field tackling on an elusive running back. You know, it's not just about running in a straight line there. You got to react to what he does. And his reactive speed was really good in 2023. Long arms are going to help him be a good tackler, capable of handling zone drops and picking up screens. He's hits with a lot of force, very productive blitzer, had 8 sacks last year. And by the way, this was a guy who I didn't even know about him when the season started. This guy kind of came out of right field here to become what is, I think, the best linebacker in this class. Some of the issues that I listed with him tends to engage with a high pad level. Some of the more cerebral aspects of the game lack a little bit. Tackling technique could use a little refinement. He doesn't sometimes it feels like he doesn't tackle through the guy, but I think it'll all come. He's 22 years old, and 2022, I don't even think he was a full-time linebacker. I think he was a part-time player. So I think that he is a second round value, and I think he's relatively close to the first.
I put a middle second round grade on him just for those reasons you mentioned. With the things that you talk about, I think you mentioned in the that you got the instincts, a bit of the awareness, and you have the tackling. And I agree with you. 34-inch long arms, legitimate size, and he does show enough in the flashes of when he is wrapping and rolling that he gets it done really well. And he can. That wasn't an issue that showed up hugely in his game. But the instincts and awareness thing is something that can and cannot sometimes come along with these players at this position. You know, it's either it is sometimes it's already baked in and you got it, or you kind of don't have it. And my worry and concern in putting him into that second round grade is that I feel a little bit more like he's never going to be a top-notch instinct guy, awareness guy, which is kind of a very valuable, I think, as much as any position at the middle linebacker position. It's very valuable with that, especially keeping yourself from getting tricked or misdirected or, going the wrong direction. But it was just that, and then how he takes on blocks. He does this little bounce move sometimes, Brendan, where he doesn't want to take the block on. He'll bounce around it, and then he'll bounce the wrong direction, taking him into a more fortuitous path to try to get back to the running back and make the tackle. Not major issues. Still a really outstanding prospect, but just those little things.
Yeah, it all feels fixable to me. That doesn't mean it will be fixed, of course. Sometimes you take it on faith. But I'm a big Edgerrin Cooper fan. He has, in the totality of things, edged his way into my top 32 barely. I'm pretty on board with him.
Understandable, completely understandable with reasons. You want upside if you're going top 32. You'd like some floor too, but give me some upside in there. And there's not another linebacker in this draft that has that. So he is a very good player, and he would be a solid pick if the Hawks were to make him.
Right. So the next guy on the list, and this is becoming the guy who, like you said, may end up being the first linebacker off the board because of his potential. People look at this guy and they see limitless possibilities, and I understand why. I definitely am feeling a little caveat emptor here personally, but that's not to say I dislike the player.
Mm-hmm.
Payton Wilson of the NC State Wolfpack, 24 years old, so an older guy, got good size except for his arms. He's got Deadpool arms, which we're gonna have to come back to that.
Who'd you say on that again?
Payton Wilson.
Oh, Payton Wilson. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Payton Wilson. He's got the T-Rex arms, which, I mean, we're going to have to talk about that because that's not a minor deal for a linebacker. But he set the combine on fire with a 4.43 40, one of the fastest linebacker times ever. He won several awards for his defensive performance last year for NC State. I think he was like the defender of the year or something like that. Averaged over 10 tackles a game, 6 sacks, 3 picks, 90 PFF grade. And he is starting to edge up into that first round, according to some people. Are you buying what they are selling on Payton Wilson?
I am. Would it shock you to hear that Luke Kuechly had 31-inch long arms?
Actually, no, because when I made my video about Payton Wilson, people pointed that out, that very fact in my comments section. That's the only reason I know that.
Yeah.
But now, I guess if you're asking, does it shock me? It is pretty surprising, but I did actually know that.
I went back because I was looking for the comp a couple nights ago. I was prepping for the show, and I was trying to find some comps as I could for these guys. And the comp I came back to was Luke Kuechly. Now, it's not a pure comp because Kuechly's instincts, I think, are a little bit better. I mean, he had that elite instincts, like almost all-time like instincts for the position through some of the film study and his understanding of how to play it. But Payton also is faster than Luke Kuechly. So there's also some things that, he kind of has that maybe Luke didn't necessarily have on the other side of it. And I'm not saying he's going to get to Luke's upside, but this is why we get to why he's being considered potentially in the first round, because he is so universally set with that skill set where he can blitz, he can drop in space and drop in space fast. You feel the testing times on the field with him, with how quickly he can get to a spot, squish and squeeze down those zones to where the quarterback will look to that edge and there is no open window there for them to throw into. He's got a dip and hands that are violent. They used him off the edge for about over 100 snaps this past year where they lined him out as an outside edge, and he looked capable in doing that type of stuff. There's really nothing when you talk about what he brings to the table, Brendan, that is, missing. Like I said, the instincts aren't elite like Luke, but they're still really good. It's just that Luke had that kind of, I can't make that comp, and you'd be throwing it in there, otherwise if you didn't. So the very short arms is a legitimate concern. I don't think just because Luke Kuechly had 31 that means that Payton Wilson at 30.5 is it's solved. We're good. Now Luke did it, so everyone can do it. It's an issue for a reason. There's a reason teams don't draft those guys. And I believe in doing the research, it was 3 guys had been taken in, I think, the past like 15 years, 20 years with under 32-inch arms or under 31-inch arms or something like that by the NFL. So they look at it with whether me or Brendan does, the NFL looks at it with a little bit of a prejudicial nature of saying, yeah, you got that. We just don't think you're going to be able to wrap up at the pro level. But if there was one player, Brendan, right? If there was one guy that was worthy of you going, let me look past this thing here that's normally a auto negation for so many inside linebackers. This guy kind of would be that guy, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I would say so. Now, you get past the arm issue, you then have the injuries issue. He's got an
Yes.
extensive injury history. He's not very strong, so getting off blockers is a struggle for him. He's not really going to be somebody who's getting off blockers that well, I don't think. He loses leverage. Not that it's the end of the world for a linebacker, but when he's engaged in like a stack and shed situation, he loses leverage. But there's a lot to like here as well. He's a great athlete, covers the field from sideline to sideline, blitzes effectively using his acceleration. He's heady in coverage, always gives maximum effort. His trigger downhill and his they call it the click and close, when you're in zone and you're backing up and then you got to plant and go forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. I mean, there's a lot to like, don't get me wrong. And I do like him. I do think he's a second round guy, but I am a little bit I'm worried about this one because of the injuries, maybe more so than the arm length.
Well, that they trace back to high school with him. So these are not just issues that go to college. It's long, long lasting, and we've tended to find these kind of players in the past where that's the case. It doesn't stop suddenly. So that is if he doesn't have the medical situation, Brendan, it's my opinion that even at 30.5-inch arms, he would have been selected in the first round, no doubt about it, without these medical injuries. So he is that kind of talent. To the point of the somewhat negative aspects you brought up, that's also why I reached the conclusion of saying that I think a will linebacker is where he's at his best at the pro level, where you're not asking him inside the mic to take on as much inside action on the second level climbers, and then you can use a little bit of that ranginess and just let him run around and wreak havoc back there.
Okay. So you would put him in the where did you end up putting him on your big board?
I had him in the middle second round. I pretty much have all three of these middle linebackers in my second round right next to each other and right in the middle.
Okay.
Neither high, neither low, but I think he certainly has first round potential. I think he's got the highest potential of maybe any linebacker in this draft, in my opinion. But
yeah.
The concerns are legit.
Okay. All right. So there's one more guy that we got to talk about in kind of, I would call it the Holy Trinity. Clearly the three best linebackers in this class in some order. And it's kind of cool because I think everybody has a little bit of a different order. There's a lot of variance here.
Yeah.
So now we do Junior Colson of the Michigan Wolverines. 21, did not test. So there's a lot we don't know. We know he's bigger than the average linebacker in the modern NFL. This guy's 238, which once upon a time was not big. It is now.
So it's like put the Big Mac down now way, right, Brendan? It's kind of like, hey, do we need to get Weight Watchers in here?
Productive the last couple years, not very splashy compared to these other guys. I will say that right now. He's not making plays in the backfield the way a lot of these guys are, but I think that Junior Colson kind of forms the third part of this linebacker group at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So without him having tested, what do you think of Junior Colson?
I think he was born to play linebacker. Junior just feels like everything is really natural for him on the field. His instincts, his awareness, pre-snap diagnosing of where the play is going, play recognition post-snap, to me, it is all of top order. I think he's the best defender in this draft at quickly identifying who has the ball and where the ball is going. And this is no small little skill to have in this day and age where there's so much redirection and fly sweep guys going in motion and fake pitch this way, coming back the other way. But he was very, if ever, rarely fooled on the tape that I saw. I think also when you come to like, well, why doesn't he have more TFLs or why isn't he having more activity in the backfield? I would say, sure, he's not necessarily the best of blitzers, but the defense, Mike Macdonald's defense, the defense he's been playing in is one that does not necessarily ask the linebacker to just completely come downhill time and time again. There's a lot of other different roles that I think those other guys in this draft that maybe did that better, Brendan, were asked or allowed to do it a little bit more than him. I would say that it's not a matter of him not being able to do it, but just that he wasn't asked to do it as much with what they're having him do with, especially with this read and react ability, Brendan. That's that whole thing with him identifying where the play going is that he's got this great read and reaction ability. You start sending him shooting down a gap, you're taking him out of that thing that he does really great. This was the guy that in his freshman year, Mike Macdonald started at middle linebacker for Michigan. So if we want to know about Mike's opinion and what he might think of this guy, I think that speaks pretty highly that you put out a freshman out that position. You're like, all right, go out there and let it roll. And he's held up well since then in this Michigan defense. He may not have been the most important player on that defense last year. Maybe a couple of this Mike Sanistril or someone else, but I think there's a good argument made. I think he has really no true vulnerabilities to his game, Brendan. He's got good lateral bounce. He can get to sideline. He takes on second level blockers, both with the willingness to dip and take them on too. He's not just a dip guy, though I will say that there's times where when he does try to dip, that gets him in problems a little bit like, Edgerrin Cooper, where it's, they try to trust their bounce too much and the bounce takes him a little too far away a bit from the play. But you just rarely see him making mistakes on film. I thought he was very comfortable in his zone drops. He's very quick in his zone drops. I didn't see him getting targeted or attacked a lot in the games I watched, and I probably watched as much tape on Colson as just about anybody. So just think he's got instincts that separate him from the rest of this class, and I think those instincts are really going to help him turn into a great pro. Now, CJ Mosley's my comp. So it's not I see a star potential with him, but I see a guy that can be in that upper crust of maybe top 5, top 6 middle linebackers in the sport.
Right. The thing that really stands out to me with Colson is his ability to shed blockers that a lot of these linebackers don't have because they're so small and physically weak. This guy has the strength and the understanding of leverage to get engaged with a blocker and win. And that's rare, I think, in this class. And I think it explains a big reason why he is so appealing, even though he doesn't have the trigger downhill of some of these other guys. He doesn't have the splash playmaking in the backfield of some of these other guys, because that part of it might actually be more appealing to Macdonald than his ability to shoot gaps or anything like that.
Yeah, this guy can come in day one, start in this defense and know exactly what he's going to supposed to do. And I think that, we'll learn quickly with Macdonald if they get a second round pick back where he stands on him. Right. So we'll know come draft day 2, what the Hawks might have thought if they happen to have a second round pick, because I don't think he's going to last into the third round. But I give you that it is fair to say that there's maybe not as much electricity in his game as Payton Wilson or an Edgerrin Cooper. But I think there's more certainty of the floor that you're going to reach with this guy. And even though he might not get to that star range because he is missing maybe those traits, still ends up being a really, really fine pro and a pure fit for this scheme that understands from day one what he needs to do.
Mm-hmm. So, I had good control of his movement, has a good athletic profile despite being a little oversized compared to contemporary linebackers, good doing zone drops. He's a sound tackler. I put him in the second round, and it's a little bit uncomfortable because, like you said, he's not a flash guy, but I think what he does bring to the table evens out to be worth a second round pick.
I do as well. Yeah, that's typically right where these kind of players would go. We've seen a lot of these, as we were talking about the top average middle linebacker draft, but what we tend to see is where there's the good top 2 or 3 of them, right, Brendan? They tend to go up in that second round somewhere, and it tends to flow like that most years.
And that was all I had in the second round this year at the linebacker spot. Did you have anybody else in the second round?
Nope. Those were my 3 guys. I went Colson, Cooper, Wilson with my pecking order.
I think Cooper's the best, but I think Colson might be the guy that we as Seahawks fans should want the most because I think he's a better fit. But I do think Cooper's a slightly better prospect personally.
I think it's fair. It's completely fair to look at it that way.
All right, so now we segue down into the third round, and I had a couple guys here, not a lot, just a little bit going on here. It's still a little bit thin up here, but I did end up slapping a third round grade on a pair of guys. First guy is going to be another one of these blue bloods, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Yes, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I remember his father very well, longtime Philadelphia Eagle.
Oh, yeah.
Really good player, actually. Really good against the run. Part of that Jim Johnson defense. His son is a little bit smaller. 228, 6 feet flat, which is you're starting to push it a little bit when you get down to 6 feet flat. 31.5-inch arms, also starting to push it if we're being real here. And the testing was not so hot. 3-cone was average. 20-yard shuttle was blah. Bench press was roughly average. He's only 21, but he's probably done growing. So physically, he's not really what you're looking for. But as a player, I think there's a little bit more here going on that we can talk about. And I don't mind him as a prospect. What do you got on Jeremiah Trotter Jr.?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind either with this because this is one where he gets to benefit Brendan with having that squatty body size of the modern linebackers able to be lighter. You were talking about this with Colson, or you can be small, both shrunk and light at the same time versus what you used to want from the position. And so it doesn't necessarily, I think, it's not a death knell for him at that point. It does help when he's pretty quick for the position and very athletic, in my opinion. He's got, oily hips that can really swivel. That really does help him out. I think the way he takes on linemen, he's got a little bit of a rip and dip move that he does. So it's not quite taking on linemen and going like this, but there's this, I'm going to dip through, and he finds a way to get around linemen doing this. It's a nice little move. It's kind of unto himself and how he does it. Now there are times as well that the size stuff is going to show up, Brendan, where he's going to get swallowed whole by blockers. It's that they just come up and it's like Jonah the whale, just where'd he go? The guy just disappeared off my screen. Did that lineman eat him? And that is something that's going to come true at the pro level at times too. There's no two ways around it. But in zone coverage is where I think he's at his best, Brendan. His zone drops are precise. They usually flow to the right direction. He's able to read the quarterback's eyes and move in tandem with it, usually to shrink down the zone and close that window up. I really liked what I saw from him in coverage. He gets great depth from the middle linebacker position. So Mike Macdonald's defense sometimes is going to ask the middle linebacker to go 25 yards to center field, not just play the typical cover 2 role of an inside linebacker, but play the single high safety role of a cover 3 defense. So he could do that type of thing, I think, even though, like you said, the testing numbers weren't great. He showed an ability to do that on tape because the Clemson defense used him in a couple of different areas in that way, especially in coverage, to try to take advantage of that. So real low center of gravity on him, I think, kind of ends up working a little bit in his favor because it's almost like he's got the smaller legs, the bigger build, kind of that sort of Blake Corum thing going on, the bigger torso going on. So it's like he can get up under, and then linemen have a hard time with him when they're 6'5", getting down to him at that size, where he almost makes it work a little bit in his advantage just to a small degree at times. I'm not saying all the time. Size stuff's still a problem, but I did put a 3rd round grade on him as well. I thought good overall player, undersized, doesn't have a huge upside. But where he's going to get, I think he's going to get really quickly, even though he's young. He's going to get to where he's going to get because of that blue blood background you mentioned.
Now, by the way, everybody, I know that YouTube's having this weird problem right now. I think it's been cleared up now, though. So if you were affected by it, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure it's a YouTube thing.
Oh, okay.
The stream was like going unavailable on and off for a second there, but I think we're okay now.
I was noticing, I was clipping on some videos before we started the show today, and YouTube was having some issues. So I think there's something going on with YouTube tonight.
Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody. But yeah, I think that he's extremely got a really high football IQ. I think he's really got good awareness on the football field. He's a deadly blitzer. Even though he's small, it's kind of hard to get a clean hit on him. He's like slippery.
Yeah.
Sound tackler. He hits harder than you would expect given how small he is. I still think the size is a concern, though. He can play over aggressive at times. It feels like he's out there kind of trying to make up for his physical limitations by playing with his hair on fire, and you can kind of trick him.
Yeah. He gets tricked and then he flows too far. He like, if you get an outside zone, there's a couple of linebackers in this class that'll do this, to your point, where they're trying to get aggressive to the spot and they just the flow, and they end up flowing out here, and then the running back comes back inside off the flow. And it's like, that was your gap. The gap's kind of a moving gap there. It's not stilted like you have on a power run where if it goes wide, your gap's kind of flowing with the gaps and you got to get back. You can't overrun that through. And he will just a little bit in there. I think you're right on that.
Yeah. So I think he's an acceptable risk to make in the 3rd round. I'd probably give him a little bit of a boost just because he is Jeremiah Trotter's son, and I think that stuff matters. So I do I like him well enough. It's probably not what Macdonald wants, right? He seems to like size.
I think so. I mean, I do think so. Certainly Roquan Smith down there has the prerequisite size for the position that you would look for. And Junior Colson, 6'2", that he started back there at Michigan. That does track a little bit. It does feel that way to me too, Brendan, where he's a good, they look at him and they go, well, he's a good prospect, but I could see the Hawks and McDonald specifically coming to, yeah, he's good. Yeah, he's going to be a good pro. Just not quite what I want at the position for what I'm looking for.
So yeah, we both have him in the 3rd round, so we both like him to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
And I got one more third round guy. So let's turn the page and talk about Cedric Gray. Cedric Gray of North Carolina, a Tar Heel, only 21. A little bit bigger, more reasonable size, 6'1.5", 234. That works in the modern NFL. Testing was pretty good, actually. There were a lot of people scared he was going to run like a 4.8 40, but he ran a 4.64, workable, passable. 1.59 10-yard split is workable. And because of that, I think people have felt a little liberated to consider him a pretty decent prospect. So what do you make of Cedric Gray?
I might get flamed for this a little bit, but the player that kind of kept coming back into my mind a bit when watching him, it's not a pure comp, but I saw some Fred Warner vibes in the way that he plays. He's just a cat quick linebacker with a lean build. Your new model for Mike's in the new era, Brendan. Outstanding production last year with 121 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 5 interceptions, and an interception. And that was with the year before piling up 144 tackles. And what stands out to me with that, Brendan, is that though he got all these tackles and he added them all up, it's not even really this, strongest part of his game. I think coverage and blitzing is where he's at his best. Coverage in particular, I don't know if there's a linebacker in this draft that's as good about his zone drops off of especially play action, where he just finds a way off play action to make sure that he's getting to his depth, where so many linebackers take that false step forward and then they get baited and then they're trying to retreat and then they don't have the speed to get back there when they're trying to retreat. He effortlessly covers so much space going backwards into his zone, and he can really get to certain routes that I think inside linebackers, even in this draft and throughout the league, just can't, quite get to. Overall, I think his run game instincts are strong, but he can be fooled. He can often overflow on those same kind of stretch plays like Jeremiah Trotter did. There was a little bit of an over aggressiveness with that, a little bit of a lack of always on the spot where the play's going to go, that taking him kind of a beat on that stuff. But the zone drops were a passing league, Brendan. And, that's really what stands out. He's more than capable as a run defender, but then the zone drops are just great with it as well. So, the only other place I thought that was a little bit of a struggle was the second level climbers, pullers getting out to him in space. He's not always the best at getting off blocks because he is slight and he doesn't have really the good feel. Like he doesn't have Trotter's dip and rip. He doesn't have Junior Colson's take it on. He doesn't have the athleticism and explosiveness of Edgerrin Cooper to get around the stuff. So it just sometimes he's going to get tracked without much to offer on that part of it.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that. Capable in man coverage. I like how smart he is when he attacks the run, really sees the run blocking develop and then makes the proper read based off that. He does get washed out if a blocker connects with him, like you said. The play's over for him if a blocker gets on him. He makes a lot of tackles. He also has a pretty high missed tackle count, a little bit alarming. Enough to be a concern, I would say, and overly aggressive, like you said. But he's a sideline to sideline defender. I know he's not the fastest, but he finds a way to always be involved.
That 159, the 159 split is really the thing to get caught on, because that's the thing you feel, to your point on that. That's that 10-yard split where that is pretty close to top notch, top level for a linebacker, even though the 4.64 is a little bit slower.
Right. So I don't think I can put him on the level of the previous guys because he doesn't have that athletic profile, but I would put him in the third round. I think he is a third round guy for me.
Solid third rounder, just like Jeremiah Trotter. I'd put him up in the top of the third round with both of them. I like them both. And I love the upside with this guy, especially the coverage abilities in this passing league.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that was actually the end of my round 3. Did you have anything else in yours?
Nope, that was it for me too as well. I looked through all these fourth rounders, Brendan. I've got a huge collection of fourth rounders, and I was trying to find one that I was like, well, go back, look a couple of these guys' tape. There's got to be one of these guys you're going to elevate up. You have so few second and third rounders, but nah, there was just enough with the little parts of the game that didn't quite sync up for me that I had to keep them in the fourth round.
I tend to agree with that. It's truly a pyramid. It is truly a pyramid.
Yeah.
The top is very
Yes.
small, and then it just keeps expanding.
Very narrow at the top.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with that being said, we now enter the fourth round territory. I'm going to start going through some of my fourth rounders. This first one is actually a guy who I think we met with either at the Combine or for a top 30 visit. I can't remember which one now. Pretty interesting one. Trevon Wallace of Kentucky. Trevon Wallace of Kentucky, 21, very young, 6'1", 237 pounds, ran a blazing fast 40, somehow had a 1.62 10-yard split, so he's slow to pick up speed, but he's such a bowling ball by the end of that run. He was up to a 4.51. That's pretty, I mean, that's kind of hard to do. His explosiveness is really, really strong as well. ESPN actually has this guy in the third. Been a very productive gap shooter for Kentucky's defense these last couple of years. What do you see with Trevon Wallace?
He's a fun player to watch, no doubt about that. You want splashes of your prospect, those times that they're showing you the special things that they're going to tease you that they can eventually tap into do on a regular basis. Trevon Wallace will give you that. I would say, though, there's really not a strong part of his game beyond the flashes that he foretells. Let me give you, for instance, on this. He looks good at times in his zone coverage drops. He drops really nice. He's obviously very athletic. And I think, like you said, that speed is, I still would put the marker of kind of sideline to sideline range with the guy, because those testing numbers are on tape. Moves really, really fast, but targeted 31 times last year, gives up 28 receptions. The lone interception that he did have was off of a tip pass. So you go, okay, I can show you moments where he's dropping in space and looks great, but by and large, it's not awesome with him in that role when you look at him, especially when he is being targeted. He does tackle really solidly. He's a really great wrap and roll tackler. You mentioned the blitzing, 5.5 sacks this last year, mainly stationed to my eyes too, Brendan, with some more in that will linebacker kind of role at times in their defense. So a guy they might be looking for the same kind of, role here with the Seahawks. 533rd ranked inside linebacker by PFF last year. So, final outlook here, bottom line, Brendan, NFL size, NFL athletic ability, NFL speed to be a starter. I think in an attacking defense like potentially ours or another one that goes very blitz heavy, I think he can find some value. I don't think the instincts are going to come far forward with him, nor do I think his ability to get off blocks is going to come forward either. I think that those are two things that are just big, huge detriments to his game, and will end up being kind of enough to kind of keep him from really being able to be a legitimately good starter. Maybe he starts a lot, but ends up as kind of your slightly below average starter. A lot of potential, still potential in him, Brennan. I won't seem like I'm kicking him though too much, because there is potential in this kid, but it's been flashes.
Yeah, very explosive. His size and speed combo is really impressive. His blitzing skills. It's just he's inconsistent right now. He's got some work to do to get to that baseline level of consistency. The cerebral side of the game I wrote down is a little bit missing with him. Easy to fool, easy to trick with eye candy. So I do see the tremendous upside here. So I did end up throwing him in my 4th round. If you trust your coaching staff to develop linebackers, and if there's anything I can trust this coaching staff to do, hopefully it's that, with Macdonald's linebacker background. But yeah, I can understand why people are a little cool on this one, but I did throw him in my 4th round.
And I have him in my 4th round too, but I do have him as my final 4th round inside linebacker. So I wouldn't be taking him, but late in the 4th. I wouldn't take him with our early 4th round pick, for instance. I'll take him with a late 4th, but I do think you've got a lot to clean up, and there's not a lot of certainty it's going to get cleaned up.
So that is Trevon Wallace. Another guy that I ended up putting in my 4th round here was, I think this was a top 30 visit as well, Curtis Jacobs. Curtis Jacobs of Penn State, 22. Another one of these Penn State guys who's a pretty sick athlete. He's got some stuff going on, but the production was kind of just like whatever. It was like, I don't know what they're doing over at Penn State. It's like they get these phenomenal athletes and then they don't really ask them to play football. But 6'1", 241, he's one of the few linebackers in this class that is 240 pounds or more. So we got a good 40 time, 4.58, a 1.59 10-yard split. The jumps were good. But where's the stats? Where's the production? I don't see it. So Curtis Jacobs, what do you make of him?
Yeah, he's going to be an attacking kind of downhill sort of linebacker, Brendan. You don't want him really into a position of read and react. I don't think that's where he's at his best. I think the more time he has to sit and think or read and react, the worse his play gets, which is where some of that lack of production comes, because it's hard to always just be attacking. You have to, from the linebacker position, occasionally, think on the move. What I do like about him is I think even at 6'1", 239, he can almost add another even 5 or 10 pounds. He looks kind of almost skinny at that size on the field. I don't know if maybe he bulked up to get to 241 at the combine, but he didn't look 241 in build on the field. He tries to use his hands to get off blockers. It's a mixed result. When it does work, he can snap right off the blocks. When he does get blocked, he is stuck forever. There's an extra hop to me, Brendan, in his change of direction. So when he's going this way to that way, it's a little bit of the, the Wile E. Coyote, ding, 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 where it's just, you can't quite put the brakes on and get it back the other way, which does cause a little bit of a beat there for him to get back to the other side. He can get caught misdirected. And because his play recognition is just average, this happens a little bit too much, in my opinion. I think he'll be best as a will linebacker at the next level. But I also will say there was kind of an interesting thing where almost about a third of his snaps at times, Brendan, in that will linebacker role, they would align him out like nickel, where he turns into sort of the slot cornerback. So I did like, and certainly he has the twitchiness, like you said, and the natural Penn State way to him that allows him to be able to pull that off despite being a linebacker weighing 240 pounds. So there's some stuff there that is fun. He is great as a blitzer. I think that's where he's at his best, especially when you're blitzing him off the edge. You can get him off the edge in kind of that sort of Jamal Adams-ish kind of blitz role at times. He is really deadly in that part. He loses tackles that he should make. I think two things occur. Either he takes a bad angle, which has him arriving late, reaching for ankles, or he just straight slips off the ball carrier. Two things I saw with him. So just as another one, this was kind of a challenging evaluation for me, Brendan. He's got starting NFL linebacker traits, especially for Seattle's new scheme. He can blitz, he can cover a whole bunch of space, while his run game instincts and approach need a lot of help, especially in his tackling. I don't know on this one. This one's a hard one. I kept him in the 4th round because the traits are tantalizing. But I do think that there is a lot to clean up here. It's a little bit like Brevin, where you've got there's some great raw mold goods, great all that, but it's going to take you a while to maybe get there.
Yeah. The one thing I would say from everything that you just said, I thought his stack and shed game is actually pretty good. I think he can actually get a blocker engaged on him and get off of him. But other than that, I pretty much agree with everything. His instincts are lacking. I don't think he's going to offer a ton on passing downs yet. I know that thing you said about the nickel linebacker thing is true, but I don't think he's very good at coverage yet. He can do it physically, but I think he's got a ways to go. His angles when chasing ball carriers down aren't very good. He takes some bad angles. So got some stuff to work on, but I still say late 4th round because there's a lot of talent here and I don't think it can be ignored. It's just one of those things where it's going to take some time to bring it out, and it might never be brought out. Who knows? Maybe he's just okay being a really good athlete.
Well, and to your point, you've got 2 linebackers ready to start this year that whoever you do draft, if you do draft one of these, let's call them projects, not pure raw project like Woolen, but just there's some projects, you got to put on a new addition to the home. You're going to need to put in a new window in the back. It's going to take a year. So you just don't count on these guys starting their special teams guy the first year to kind of get some of this stuff figured out. But it would make sense if you're able to get him kind of this later 4th round to do that type of thing. You can afford to do it.
Right. All right. My next 4th round guy would be Texas Longhorn here. Interesting player. Really kind of a fun mix of a few different traits here. Jaylen Ford, the Longhorn, 22 years old, 6'2", 240 pounds. So he's got nice size. Mm-hmm. But he's also, I think, potentially the best. Well, maybe I'll say it. He might be the best cover linebacker in this draft. He, I think, was originally playing safety, I think, at one point. So he's really good in his cover skills. He's been very productive the last 2 years. 220 tackles, 20 and a half for loss, 6 interceptions. A lot going on here that I'm intrigued by with Jaylen Ford. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's accurate to assess that he's as good as he is in coverage. It definitely does stand out. I think he's a top end run defender, even over the top of how he is in coverage, though. I think there's a little bit of that thing going on where when it's good, it's really good. A nose for the ball, 6 interceptions the past 2 years. He can bring you the splashy highlight play in coverage where you're watching a middle linebacker high pointing the ball or breaking the ball up and driving on a ball coming off coverage. He can give you those splashy moments, which will tell you, okay, this guy's going to be great in coverage. But you do break it down the bottom line. He allowed 73% of the passes thrown his way this past year to be completed. He did give up over 400 yards. I think overall in his college career, when you look at it, Brendan, he has been a plus in coverage, but I do think there's still some room there for him to grow, which is saying something, like you said, because there is those moments of where he shows you, man, there's not many players, not just in college football, but the pros that could have pulled off that kind of play. That is very unique to you. I think he's just okay as a blitzer, a really sure wrap-up tackler. I think I probably liked his run defense, maybe even more than you did, because I thought he was really good in his run game, and especially with dipping off of blocks. The ability to dip off blocks with Jaylen Ford showed over and over again where he's got that unique ability to just suddenly dip under the hands. The guy shoots the hands, he dips under it, he's passed, or he's able to kind of work his way off of it without having to do a lot of extra work to get there. He can get it quickly done. He's a little bit of a build-up speed guy, Brendan. I don't have the testing numbers on him. I don't think did you get his pro days on there? I didn't see his pro day.
I don't think he did the pro day, but I could be wrong. I know he didn't do the combine.
Yeah. So I do think he's not necessarily one of those guys you're looking at that's he's probably into that 4.55, 4.6 range, probably the 1.62, 10-yard split guy. He can get fooled on misdirection and just where the play is flowing. I think his pre and post snap awareness are a little touch and go. Sometimes it looks great. Sometimes it's like completely missing on a play. But that's, again, this is welcome to the world of a prospect, where this is where they say you're supposed to get caught up on more of holding those flashes and more of what you consistently see on tape that they can bring, because you can figure out the rough stuff. You can round out the rough stuff if it's correctable, of course. One of those things that are correctable, certain traits you can't correct, like, stiff hips or lack of speed, or, you ain't fixing that.
Right. I don't think he's a bad run defender either. Clearly, he makes a lot of plays in the run game. He's got size to take on blockers and disrupt the play. Like, he can, even if he doesn't necessarily make the play, he's a guy who can block the lead blocker and take up all his attention and free somebody else up to make the play. He's fundamentally sound in run defense, is what I wrote down. His straight line speed is mediocre. Sometimes he overruns the play, and slow acceleration. He is a build-up speed guy. But I think his coverage skills are appealing. I think his ability to play the run makes him pretty well-rounded. I don't think he'll ever be an elite player in this league because he doesn't have the instincts for it. But there's clearly value here. I say 4th round.
I have been, and I put him up high in the 4th round, a player that's really grown on me with time, Brendan. So I've got him as one of my top guys in the 4th round, to your point. And I think you're right. Maybe you don't have as much ceiling with this guy, but there's also a nice part this guy could bring to you even year one, where he could become a sub package linebacker for you, where you bring him in on those 3rd downs as a nickel defender, and he's really well suited in that role to go.
Right. So that is our our next 4th rounder. I have this next guy coming up here. I might be a little higher on this guy than some people. I think this might be one of my guys. We'll see what you think about him, though, because I'm not sure where you had him. It's Marist Liufau. Liufau of Notre Dame. There are 2 Notre Dame linebackers in the draft this year. This is my preference of the 2. 6'2", 234, decent 40-yard dash, 4.64. Not a ton of production the last couple of years, but when I look at him, what I see is a really good 3rd down linebacker or nickel linebacker. Somebody who's a good tackler. He's able to really take on blockers in a way that is disrupting to the play. Like, he can swallow up that lead blocker and completely ruin the plans that the play had. He's really smart. He's good in coverage. He's good at diagnosing plays. He's a good blitzer. He added that dimension to his game pretty well last year. So I think he's going to be a nickel linebacker in this league, and I think he'll be a good one.
Yeah, it's a guy I did put a 5th round grade on for. There was just a little bit more of a mixed bag possibility to what he was bringing to the table. And I did feel like it was probably a little bit of a symptom of there being so many linebackers in this 4th round for me, Brendan, that were guys with really nice sparkling traits, but had the holes in the game. And I just didn't know if there was many sparkling traits to him. I can't deny he's a high energy player, goes 100 miles an hour, plays with his hair on fire. He's got some straight line speed, but I don't think he is the most dynamic of athletes. I think he's also lighter than that listed weight at 234. It's probably why he ran a little bit of a slower 40s. I think he probably added about 10 pounds, 15 pounds to get up to that spot from what he played at college. I wouldn't have been shocked, at least if he was at like 220. Solid instincts in the run game, rarely fooled. He feels a step ahead, moving the right direction. I think you just spoke to that just a little bit. I do think he can sometimes take some odd routes to the ball carriers, and he's not always in the right place to make the tackle when he should have been. He is a good tackler. He's got a little bit of pop in his pads too, Brendan. He can hit you a little bit. He doesn't bring much as a pass rusher. He's going hard in the rush lane, but if someone occupies it, he's stymied, he's blocked. The only way he's going to get to the quarterback is if he's got a free rush at him. To your point on the zone dropping and quarterback spying that he was mainly kind of used, a lot of quarterback spy role for him. Only targeted 11 times last year in coverage. Now, he gave up 10 catches on those 11 targets, Brendan, but hey, 11 targets means you're dissuading throws at quite a high rate. So everything about him feels kind of slightly above average, but I do feel like he's just a straight line guy without much, he's got little tight hips. I don't think he's really a guy that can flip and roll. Didn't necessarily love him as much in coverage as maybe where you were at with him, which is why I dropped him down into that 5th round, but a guy that I thought I can't see starting the next level. I see more of a special teams guy when it's all said and done, backup type.
Yeah, again, I think he'll be like a sub-package linebacker. I don't think he'll be a starter. I think he will be doing, like I said, nickel linebacker roles. You don't really want him on the field for run plays. You want him on the field for pass plays. That's my estimation of him.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing that was hugely bad about him or poor about him. Everything had some solid plusness to it. Just the limited ceiling to me was what brought him down for me, I guess.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think this might be my final round 4 guy. I'm not 100% sure, but I think this might be it for me. It's Combine Warrior, a little bit of a Combine Warrior here who really turned heads. And it's somebody who I watched constantly throughout his college career. And I didn't know he had this in him. Edifuan Ulofoshio. Edifuan Ulofoshio of Washington. Good player when he was here, but I didn't think he was this kind of an athlete. 236 pounds, almost 33-inch arms, 4.56 40, 159 10-yard split, big vert, almost 40 inches, 10-foot 8-inch broad. So very, very athletic. Really only has 1 year of big production, but it was good. And then he built on it with that monstrous combine. So what do you think of Ulofoshio?
Yeah, a guy that's just kind of developed and gotten better and better and better throughout his career. He's played a lot of college football to get where he's gotten, and certainly injuries were the big problem at play this past year. Finally able to kind of put it together and stay healthy and make it work. Good first step quickness, strong wrap up tackler, very rangy. Brendan, the testing numbers certainly encapsulate this a little bit, but you see it on tape. You will find him all over the football field, and if he's not in on the action, he's always near to the action. He can get out of control when zeroing in on the ball carrier, and he puts himself in bad positions sometimes to not make the tackle. This is why you've got 11 missed tackles on his resume this past year. There is some over aggressiveness there. Again, just out of control, a little over aggressive. It does work in favor for him sometimes because he can get to a play faster than other players might get to a spot, but it'll be that double-edged sword thing where it can cut both ways, where he'll run himself out of a good number of plays on top of that. He's well developed, I think, at taking on second level blockers, Brendan, and finding a way to get around them or disengage off of them. He has just a good feel of what I'd call kind of block avoidance. It's not even taking on the blocks or dipping sometimes. Just I anticipate this guy climbing down to the second level. Let me get a couple steps in this direction, cutting off his pathway to be able to block me, and now I can get back into the run and play, and I'm perfectly fine. I also thought he was very solid, not great, but just solid in coverage too. So it came back to me with him, and why I kept in that 4th round is you got the great testing numbers. You have a solid overall game. It's the injuries that remain really the big question mark with him. And that wasn't enough for me to ding him down to the 5th round because I think, it didn't seem like there was any injury that he had that was like, this is going to be a chronic problem injury. It just seemed like things that had got him on a particular year.
Yeah, I think the concern would just be he keeps getting injuries. He's snake bit more than, this is something that he's never going to get over. So
yeah,
I understand the concern, but he's a hard hitter on blockers and ball carriers, talented coverage linebacker, physical in coverage. He works through the wash well, like you said. He works his way through traffic. He does tend to overrun plays a little bit. I don't think his change of direction speed is great compared to his straight line speed. He is a little bit on the shorter side. He's barely over 6 feet tall. But 4th round pick for me. There's every reason to believe he might be better than his college production. He might be a better player than his college stats would tell you. So I think he's a 4th rounder, and he is my final 4th rounder.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Deion Henley from last year. Watched WSU as a player who went, I think, in the third round. So, but no, I do have a fourth round grade on him as well.
All right. Did you have any other fourth rounders?
I had a decent number of still fourth rounders left.
Okay.
Did you have a chance to look at Jordan McGee?
Yes, I did actually. I got him. There he is.
All right. So Jordan McGee, a kid out of Temple, not exactly a football factory, Brendan. 6'1", 228 with 32-inch long arms. So everything's just like kind of at a good enough level there, right? But did test really well. 4.55 in the 1.54 10-yard split, especially was outstanding. Pretty good vert, pretty good broad. He's a fast and light will linebacker to me, Brendan. I don't think I see a Mike future for him. He's got excellent quickness to the spot. He'll engage blockers and often bounce clear of the block after contact. So he's really good at pinballing up off blockers and being hard to just keep the hands on him for whatever reason. You know, guys can sometimes get that grip strength in there, and he just somehow can keep away from the grip strength. I don't know how he does it. Maybe just the explosiveness of the contact on the lineman, because he'll just kind of he'll pull the trigger on them a little bit. Great closing speed. Really does in his closing speed. Brendan, I felt like helped him to be a better tackler, because running backs feel him coming up in space and they think, okay, I've got 2 seconds before he's going to get here before I have to make my move. And they start to get into like their stutter step, and he's already on top of him tackling him. And so he's able to surprise ball carriers sometimes that quickness and getting to them on top of them so fast. A top 12 graded linebacker by PFF last year, and his grades all across the board were really good. There wasn't really any part that was bad to his game, maybe pass rush, but I think he had like 4 pass rush reps or something like that. Well, no, he was actually a very strong blitzer, so it wasn't that even. He was a good blitzer there as well. But 32 times he was sent on the blitz last year, Brendan, 20 pressures, 3 quarterback hits, and 3.5 sacks. So the production as a blitzer for the few times they sent him was outstanding, in my opinion. He does have a weird tendency to step into second level blockers and pullers when he gets his eyes to attach to the backfield, you know? So he's looking backfield, the lineman's coming, and he just kind of walks right into the lineman, you know, like when you're looking at your phone, walking down the street, and you just kind of walk into somebody. And that stood out. It happens quite a bit. He is a little slow out of his stance post snap too, which I don't understand. There's always this thing like he has to kind of think something through after snap, and then I'll get to moving, you know? Then I'll get to moving. It's like, go, you know, be going into a direction post snap. Don't kind of just sit there and flat footed, be kind of staring, and everybody else around him's moving. And then he finally gets to moving. It's a weird little thing with him, but it did again show up a bit with him. But the thought process that this guy could be a Patrick Queen kind of guy as a will linebacker in our kind of defense with the skill set he brings, because I thought coverage was pretty strong too as well. I liked it at that point, and that was enough for me to elevate him as a fourth round guy. I was late to watching him on the tape a bit with him here, but I didn't think he had any monstrous hole in his game. And I can't deny the production, can't deny the physical skill set.
Yeah, I liked him too. I did end up putting him in the 5th round, early 5th round, I'd say. I liked him. Flies around with a lot of energy, works his way through traffic well, always chasing stuff in the backfield. He's got 23 tackles for loss over the last 2 years,
Give me
constantly
1
living
second.
in the
Sorry,
backfield.
Brent. 1 second.
Okay, no problem.
Right back.
Da, 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 da. Brando had to go get his pizza.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem, right? So, I like the way he takes on blockers, even though he's a smaller guy. He does throw himself into it with a lot of enthusiasm. He doesn't have. I don't think his field speed is as good as his 40 speed.
Mm.
I think he looks a little slower on the field. Uh, I think he's often badly out of position due to aggressiveness. He is somebody who can be fooled. Like I think Kyle Shanahan would have a lot of fun with this guy right now. I'll put it to you that way. But he's definitely appealing. Really good athlete. It's probably a little bit of a project. You're going to need a year to figure this one out, but I can see it. I like him. So I would say 5th round value.
Yeah, I went the 4th because I think there's definitely just a little upside there to him. 5th round is kind of like you got what you got to me, and with that, I think that the upside there's just enough to kind of elevate him a little bit more.
So who else did you have in your 5th round or 4th round? Excuse me.
The next guy was the other Notre Dame guy that you didn't like quite as much. I'm guessing we both flipped on this one, where one of us put that guy in the 5th, the other guy put the other guy in the 5th or the 4th, and that's J.D. Bertrand out of Notre Dame.
I do have him, yes.
So I've got a player comp with him as Dre Tranquill. I think he is a very specific kind of linebacker, Brendan, in that he's not going to fit to all defenses. So I put this grade with kind of an asterisk, being that he has to go to the right system to be at his best. He's a downhill middle linebacker. Could also be, I think, a little bit of a will at the next level. A little bit of a short arms with the 30.5-inch arms, or 30 and 3/5 inch arms, so almost 31 inches, which had me a little bit on the edge of putting him in that 5th round range. But great first step quickness, part of what makes him a real big problem as a blitzer. Notre Dame really leaned on him in this role with over 100 snaps as a pass rusher last year. I thought he's a very rugged defender, not shy about contact or getting physical. Good burst for the position, both straight line backwards, side to side, not fast, just average speed. It's a different story when he's got to stand pat and take on downhill blocks, and this is where we get to the rub, Brendan. When he's caught in these moments, he's getting washed out. He's still solid against the run, shows smart instincts against the run, but when he's left in that read and react position, when he's left to have to kind of wait to take on those second levels rather than get downhill, go attack, it's just a whole different story with him. He is usually a step slow in his reactions and coverage. Any kind of complicated route will have him lost in the woods. He's just kind of missing a feel for zone. I just did like how he wrapped up as a tackler. Maybe I probably, in hindsight, should have knocked him down to 5th round. I might actually end up knocking him down to 5th round when it's all said and done here, because I don't know if the coverage stuff is going to come forward. So it's as much as I thought at the time in watching him initially, Brendan, that attacking thing could fit to a certain style of defense that would ask the Giants with a Wink Martindale type defense. Maybe he could be really good in that, but probably should have, in hindsight, put him in a 5th.
Right. He was a team captain for the Fighting Irish. Strength and willingness to take on blockers, understands how to get through traffic to make a play. I think he'll be a really good special teamer at minimum in the NFL. He has a special teamer kind of skill set, but he's got really short arms, so he's not going to be a great tackler. He doesn't have a great athletic profile. I don't think he's going to be able to make it with that athletic profile. His angles he takes aren't very good. Doesn't cover a ton of ground. So I was more like 6th round on him. I couldn't really get into this one.
I get it. I can understand that as an assessment on this one. So I just do trust what he does do in the run game, at least. I think that's, and is a blitzer, but that is admittedly a little bit of a, restricted role.
Your next 4th rounder, who else you got?
Next guy that I've got in the 4th round is going to be Darius Masau.
This one I did not look at, so you're going to have to take it away on this one.
Well, it's, if you like Jeremiah Trotter, there's a lot of what you get from Jeremiah Trotter in Darius's game. Another squatty body with short legs, big torso, solid all-around game like you get with Trotter, at his best in coverage like you get with Trotter, quickly getting to his spots, good feel for zone, finding the quarterback's eyes, still being able to keep his feet moving to the spot in coverage while watching those eyes. Sometimes the guys will watch the quarterback's eyes and the feet stop and the receiver's running behind him and they're not doing anything. He's another guy like Trotter that also dips off those blocks. This is where these guys to me just stood out to me, Brendan, where there's so many similarities to him. And yet you have, Trotter going 3rd round and this guy where it's really not that far off. Even if you look down to their grades by PFF, he's really not far off of where Trotter's at. And yet, he's looked at as sort of this, 5th, 6th round guy on the outside looking in on people in this draft, or maybe even a 7th round guy. And I go, well, why, if he brings a lot of what Trotter is able to bring at that point. Is that the outlook of it? The top end speed isn't there. That certainly is true, but there's more than enough quickness to me. The 1.59 10-yard split on the 4.7 40 shows that he's got the quickness to get it done, which is more what you're, to me, going to require from the linebacker than pure speed. Speed's nice to have, but give me the quickness instead. And then as a blitzer, 15.5 sacks over the past 4 years. He can blitz, and he's really good at beating running backs, especially. He's got that Bobby Wagner swim move that he can do once the running backs come out to try to pick him up in pass protection, and it really just he's right off of it. He can snap it, and that's why he's gotten those sacks. They're not cheap. There aren't him just quarterback spying and getting the backfield, Brendan, for a negative 1 yard loss. It's him actually, coming through as a blitzer and attacking. So I just thought he brought a really nice, complete skill set, just missing top end speed and size. And I think that this would be a very nice fit he's one of my sleepers in this draft, Brendan. I think he'd be a very nice fit for this defense.
All right.
You're muted. Sorry. No, you're not.
No, I think I'm good.
I said so.
Yeah. Okay. I'll look into him a little bit before the draft. We got some time, but yeah, I don't got anything on him. Who else?
Last guy that I have in my huge 4th round middle linebacker collection here, Brendan, is going to be the other linebacker out of Michigan, Michael Barrett.
I did have him. Yes.
And just a guy that I liked. Here's my thing with Michael Barrett, Brendan. I understand there's the 4.74 and the 1.64 10-yard split. My opinion of that is that he's faster on the field than that time score. So this may be about where between me and you and our assessment of it, where I have a little bit of a difference, because I think sometimes the testing scores don't always match to the play field speed, and sometimes it's a little bit different, in my opinion. I think if a lot of people talk about Jamal Adams, Brendan, and they say, what would have Jamal Adams have been like if he had been a linebacker from day one out of college coming in? And I think that this guy shows you what that would have been like, what that player would have looked like if you just moved him into linebacker full time. Because there's a lot of that suddenness that Jamal had to his game, a lot of the, and again, understand too, when Jamal came out, he was good in coverage coming out of college. So something that this guy does bring as well, I think, from the linebacker position. But just that attacking, pull the trigger, get downhill quickly when I see it, and I can get there very quick. That's that thing I speak to Brendan about. He's faster than his tested times because on tape, he's a blur. He's just getting down there. You're not watching a guy that's at a 4.7 or a 1.64 10-yard split. He's lightning quick on the football field. Has a knack for getting the quarterback, used all over the field in Michigan's defense. Another guy a little bit like Junior Colson, and this is why I raised him in the 4th round, who Mike Macdonald's going to have familiarity with. He's going to have familiarity with this defense. Used all over in that defense in a variety of different roles to do a variety of different things, and he, succeeded in all. Mike, will, edge, A and B gap blitzer. I've even seen him lined up as a safety in the goal line, Brendan. So like his versatility, like his aggressiveness he plays with and the physicality he plays with at his size at 6 foot 239. I think the play recognition is a little bit down. That's the part where he needs to clean it up. But I do think he's a really good wrap-up blocker, a really good wrap-up tackler, just held back a little bit by maybe some of the play recognition, maybe some little bit of awareness, lack of maybe top-end speed. But I thought he could bring a guy that might give you kind of a bit of a role fit in this defense. Not starter, but a role fit with this skill set.
Yeah, I had a hard time with Barrett. I do think he's a good tackler, like you said. He covers a lot of ground, and I think he can maybe do like man coverage. But he's undersized. He's 5'11", so he's shorter than Trotter. He's indecisive when he needs to trigger downhill, I feel like. I think his decision-making is labored. He gets tunnel vision when chasing a play, is what I wrote down. I feel like he doesn't really see the bigger picture sometimes when he's trying to process a play. And he's just not a good enough athlete to overcome any of these things. So I actually put him down in my 7th round. I couldn't get into this one at all.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you set him loose in a scheme, he can be a TFL machine and stack up some sacks and give you some help you in coverage too as well. Don't think necessarily I see a starter, but a guy that could be a sub package nickel backer kind of role player. I think he can be that.
I mean, maybe in hindsight I would bump him up to like the 6th, but I don't know. It was just a bad mix for me of not a very good athlete and doesn't trust his instincts very well.
See, that's where I definitely differed. I thought he was a really good athlete, and that's where I go to again. I don't think that the testing numbers accurately kind of show what this guy is. And, we both would agree on this. There's guys that aren't going to test well, that when they show it, you put them on the field, they're going to look a lot better than that. And I just thought, so again, that comp that you go back to Jamal Adams, a little bit of that athleticism, that flipping of the hips, that ability to kind of, he's the dipping he can do as a blitzer coming off, that athleticism. That's part of what makes him such a good blitzer, is that he's able to get low to the ground coming off that edge. And I think that there's enough there with it. Now, again, I don't see the top end side on. I'm not seeing this even a starter will guy in this defense, but if you were to use him as a little bit of a weapon, you bring him out every once in a while for special purposes. It's like Helldivers, when you got that certain kind of gun that you're sitting on that you want to bring down from the top,
Right.
And you call it in.
All right, we got Kevin Mullen. Thank you for the $9.99 super chat. One player Hawks must leave draft with, and why? Also, what player / position Hawks need to stay away? Appreciate the hard work you two have done these last 2 months.
Thank you. I would go with, I'll go with a player on both sides of the ball, Brendan. I would say I think that I'd like to get out of this draft with Cooper Bebe or Junior Colson. Would be the two guys that to me stand out on both sides of the ball. How about yourself?
Bebe's a good one. I'm a little
sorry, I didn't say that right too. I keep saying it wrong.
Yeah, I don't know how it's pronounced either. There are a few different ways to go with it. We'll figure it out if we draft him. We're gonna have to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I am going to say, I think I'm a little more Graham Barton than Cooper Bebe. I think Barton has higher upside and he's a better fit for zone. I think I would go Graham Barton a little bit more than that. And my God, who else? I mean, I guess there only really needs to be one, so I guess I could just be my one.
There you go.
I think that's the guy I'm kind of zeroing in on, especially after that freaky pro day he had.
Yeah. Who's the guy you're avoiding?
The guy that I am avoiding. Let me think. I mean, we're talking about like from anybody, right? So I could say somebody like Nate Wiggins, the Clemson corner guy, because I don't think he's a good enough tackler for what we're going to need in the Mike Macdonald defense, but that kind of goes without saying at the same time, right?
Yeah, it makes sense to go with that one a little bit. He's a good player, though. He's fun to watch. Let me go with two guys. Number one guy that I've been saying for a while that I'm on this board with, that's J.J. McCarthy. On the offensive side of the ball, I'd stay with – I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole in the first couple of rounds. And on the defensive side of the ball, Terrion Arnold. I think Terrion Arnold is one of the more overrated cornerbacks in this draft. I think he's topped out. I think he is more of an athlete at the position than he is a cornerback, and that the natural feel for the position isn't really there to the point that he should be being talked about to be taken in the first round, in my opinion.
All right, that's an interesting one. We'll talk more about corners in a couple days, by the way, everybody. That's going to be another fun show.
That's right.
But yeah. All right. Thank you, Kevin Mullen.
Appreciate you, Kevin.
Okay, so now we're in the 5th round here because that was your last 4th round guy, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so my first 5th round guy we're going to have here, no particular order when you get down here, by the way. I'm just kind of going through my 5th rounders in order, in a random order. I'm going to lead off with Tommy Eichenberg of Ohio State. 6'2", 233. Testing was pretty forgettable. Nothing really stood out there, just kind of like meh. And the big boards have kind of come around on this guy, but I remember before the season started, this was a borderline first-round pick guy, and he just never really got to where he needed to go. Had, in some ways, a down year for the Ohio State defense. But where do you stand on Eichenberg right now?
Tackling machine. Past 2 years, Brendan, 200 tackles. Man will just kind of find a way to bring you down. I think that just he's not artful in his approach. It's not one where this guy fundamentally, it's be it like a Cooper or Colson or Payton Wilson, where when they go make a play, it looks just beautiful, right? It's going to be a bit messy with him. He's got for instance, like he's got a part of his tackling technique that's it's like a one-arm tackle that shouldn't work, where he just kind of hooks the running back as he's going by him, and he's able to bring him down to the ground like one of those cartoon hooks pulling guys off stage. He is mostly a read and react defender. He is not a downhill linebacker. He's a little bit slippery off the blocks. He's got a little bit of snappy disengagement that he can bring from time to time. He's also a little bit like bumper cars when he's down there inside and he's trying to get off blocks, where he'll just sort of throw himself into a block. That block will bounce him into another guy. That guy will bounce him off into that guy. And then he kind of falls into the tackle. And it's really chaotic. And again, there's no artfulness to the approach here. But he can kind of get it done, I guess. You know, he finds a way a little bit with it. I don't know if I trusted to the next level to translate, Brendan. This is why you and I are a little bit softened on him in this respect of things. He can be sniping as a run blitz defender at times when they did set him loose, though he was so often really in that read and react role. Maybe above average blitzer in 2022, but this past year that went down in his game. Solid overall in coverage, though he does give up a high percentage of catches that are targeting to him. So does a good job of keeping the throws come his way. When they do, he gives up the catches. Not much of a ability to pick up the ball in flight or do anything with as far as reacting to the throws. He's just going to kind of make the tackle after the play. I just felt like the bottom line problem for me, Brendan, was he wasn't good enough in coverage to be where he is in the run defense, where he has some good attributes, but more often than not with him in the run game, he's catching everything downhill. Right? It's that thing you used to talk about a little bit with Bobby Wagner when you used to speak about him at times in that endpoint where it's like, okay, or Jordyn Brooks, you're getting 150 tackles, but everything's 5-6 yards down the football field where you're getting the tackle.
Right.
It's what's the impact of that? I feel like this is a guy, if he started for a full year with you in the NFL, he wouldn't be completely like a crap show, but he'd be like a 57 overall PFF grade. Or just below average.
Yeah, I think he's a decent tackler. I think his instincts are okay. I think he's a smart player. I think his zone coverage abilities are good, but he just doesn't cover a lot of ground to me. He's not much of an athlete, and he covers ground slowly. His change of direction in particular is pretty weak, I think. And he's not that this is a big deal. Zone coverage is more important, but he's not very good in man coverage. I'm not personally worried about that. Some people might be.
Yeah. No, he's not putting those positions too many times on tape either.
Yeah, I kind of feel like he's already tapped out. I feel like he is what he is right now. So I put him in the 5th round. I think he'll be good on special teams, but not much more than that.
I would agree.
You put him in your 5th round as well?
Mm-hmm. I've changed up recently on that one, Brendan, from when I sent you the list on that. So I had him before, I think, in the 4th, but I went back the other night and watched him again, and it was...
All right, this next guy I kind of view as a little bit of a long shot in the NFL, but I did end up thinking there was enough potential here for me to put in the 5th. It's close, though. Not by much. Tyron Hopper of the Missouri Tigers. Kind of a late riser last year in draft circles. And then he really fell apart as the season went on. So once he got in the spotlight, he melted, kind of, it felt like. But yeah, do you think much of Tyron Hopper in the NFL?
I don't. I've put a 7th round grade on him. I know he measured in at 231, but he's another rail thin middle linebacker that I think played at like 220 last year. So, I think he had to add weight to the combine just so he was in there at legitimate. Long strides that gives him a little bit of at times it looks like an unusual burst a bit for the position. He is faster, I think, a little bit than the testing time because, again, I think he added that weight to get to 4.63, Brendan. That's the real thing that stands out to me a little bit with him. Over and over, I just watched him again and 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 again, taking poor, horrible, atrocious routes to the ball carrier. And it's made worse by the fact that he can't really get off of blocks. When he gets to just become a human missile, see target, destroy target, he can look like, he's got NFL burst and can convert that speed to explosive power on contact. It looks nice, but it is highly infrequent. Even blitzing, he's really best as really only a delayed blitzer. You can't just send him purely as a blitzer. You have to give the offensive line a second to set up, and then he gets to go. I also think he's absolutely brutal in coverage. There is no natural sense of where to go and who to pick up. It's like he's not been given a coverage assignment at times, watching him in zone coverage. He was the 725th rated inside linebacker out of 775 inside linebackers in college football last year. I just came down to the final conclusion where I said, if I tell you no, will you understand?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, especially the coverage part. He's really bad in coverage. It's not even like just giving up stuff. It's like coverage busts. Like he was not anywhere close where he needed to be. Misses a lot of tackles, doesn't see the big picture. He doesn't trigger fast. I do think he's a pretty good athlete. He's got explosive agility, can cover ground. He's a hard hitter. Short area quickness and acceleration are pretty good. So he's like talented, he's athletic, but he doesn't have the mental part of the game. I'm not optimistic about him figuring it out because he is an older prospect now. He's 23. That is a little bit on the older side. So I look at him and I go, it's kind of a lottery ticket, right? And, there's a place in the world for buying lottery tickets, but I can't do it until the 5th round. So I'm not super high on Tyron Hopper either. A little bit higher than you.
If you were to learn that he played last year at 218 pounds to show
Yeah.
those skills you showed, would you still look at it in that same light?
Probably not. I'd probably then have to bump him down to like the 6th or 7th. Yeah, but it's always hard to tell exactly what their playing weight was, I feel like, because it's
I agree.
always listed at lighter than what they actually weigh in at the combine. I think they get weighed at like the beginning of the year or something, and then they play the season, and then the combine's like a full year after their initial weigh-in, and they've grown so much, it's always heavier.
Mm-hmm. Could be. Yeah, definitely could be there. That was the part to another guy that the 4.63 things you mentioned about the explosiveness is there. And that's where I go, well, he's not doing 4.63. He's not, he was better. He was better than that as far as what we saw from what I saw him on the field. And I think that's where he added that weight. And the first thing that happens when you add the weight is you're going to slow down a little bit.
All right. We do have Upo. Thank you for the $20.
Woo!
Big movie fan here. Future off-season collab vid idea. Top 10 football movies of all time from each of you. Rule is something football related must be the central theme of the movie. Until that vid comes, got a recommendation. Well,
So he's won a sports movie. It's got to be a football movie. We can do a couple football movies here.
I'll
Certainly.
tell you, my favorite football movie, I don't know if it's a football movie. You're going to have to rule on this one for me, I think, Brandon.
Okay.
The Last Boy Scout.
Yeah, not a football movie.
Yeah, it's not really, right? Football's like part of the plot, but it doesn't.
Because he does say it has to be the central theme.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
It's
got to
not.
be. How about The Program? Underrated all-time movie,
I've not
I
seen that one.
that's an underrated one with some classics, including they've got the roided out dude who's just a little bit too true to life on, what you picture with it. But, that's a pretty good one. I think James Caan's the coach in that, and, they got that great scene in that movie where the, like, middle linebackers in class, and the teacher's asking all these questions, and he's just like, and then he gets into the film study room, and the coach is like, okay, the X9BA, what's your obligations here? And he just starts going, if I take the X defender left, I'm got to scrape down to the left. But if I don't scrape down, then I'm dropping back to the zone right. And I thought it was hilarious how they could show you where, oh no, you can actually be pretty smart on this one thing. It's just, he's just having to get that other stuff. But program's okay. It's a good extra one, but I think we could do something like that. I could come up with 10. Get all the right moves in there. And
Is All the Right Moves the Tom Cruise one?
so that's
Yeah,
Tom
okay.
Cruise one. Yeah, he's getting
Yeah,
recruited.
yeah, where he like straight up tackles the receiver and then gets called for a flag and then gets mad like he didn't do anything.
Yeah,
That always made me laugh. That was funny.
it was pretty funny because it was pretty blatant. Like, what did you
Yeah, it's
expect?
like,
They're gonna call it on you, buddy. So
especially after Bill Polian got done with you.
that's right. That's right.
Uh-huh. But let me see here. I definitely haven't seen 10, I don't think.
We got
I've seen Any Given Sunday. I've seen that one.
that's a good one. How about Varsity Blues? That's another one. Another underrated one is the Kurt Russell one with Robin Williams, where
The Best of Times.
The Best of Times. It's another good one. They got good chemistry in that. Those two do.
Yeah. I've never seen, and this is a surprising one for a lot of people. I've never seen Remember the Titans.
I have. I didn't. For people put it in that classic. I liked it. I liked it. I didn't quite get to that. It's a classic thing, but it was solid. It was good.
There was here's a weird one that I've seen. Leatherheads. Did you ever see that one?
I couldn't get through it.
Yeah, it was weird. I saw it in the theaters because back then I saw pretty much everything that came out. That was a weird one.
Yeah, I tried and I just couldn't. It just
was
didn't.
a comedy.
Yeah, they didn't land. The jokes weren't hitting for me on that one.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like football doesn't have the best movies for sports. I feel like baseball always has the best sports movies.
Another one for you that's an old classic on that, though, is North Dallas 40 with Nick Nolte.
I've not seen that one, no.
And that's a dark football one. It's got them back in the late 70s. We're showing like what was really happening with those players in the 70s, where it's just drugs and yeah, getting out. They have like Nolte getting out of bed. He's a receiver, like an aging receiver, and he's just like he can barely he has to move his leg, and he's like all stiffened out and everything. But that's a pretty good one too.
Um, I thought about seeing the Kurt Warner movie, but it was going to weird me out because I know what Kurt Warner looks like, and seeing somebody
Yeah,
who doesn't look like Kurt Warner at all play Kurt Warner would bug me.
they can't get the actors to be quarterbacks in films, right? You
Right.
can't it doesn't work because you can tell that he doesn't have a throw. You just go, that guy can't throw a football. He's an old time like quarterback. Like you can't throw.
Mm-hmm.
It's I understand you got to get the actor than a player, but that's the part of me is that the second I see the guy throw, it takes me out of the movie, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah. I've seen both The Longest Yards. I've seen both of those.
the original's better in my opinion. I think the
Yeah,
original
yeah,
holds up.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to make a comparison. It's like imagine if they remade The Godfather and had Will Ferrell play Michael or something like that.
Yeah,
It's just weird.
it is. It just
It's
didn't
the
fit
same
with
thing.
Sandler in that role. It didn't.
Hmm.
He was missing kind of the effortless sort of charisma stuff that you get from Burt Reynolds in the original. Plus, Burt was a former football player, so again, we come back
Oh
to
yeah,
bringing somebody in that actually looks the part and plays the part and like it looks real. So yeah, that's another one. Somebody else was mentioning Jerry Maguire. That's a good one too. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. I can dig that. Um, I can't think of too many other ones like
Draft Day.
obvious. Yeah, Draft Day I read about and it didn't sound like it would be that good, but I had one friend who said it was good, but he couldn't describe it in a way that resonated with me.
It's a guilty pleasure because you obviously aren't going to be able to watch it. Somebody covers football in this and goes, okay, well that's accurate there with this. I mean, some of the trade backs and stuff in the movie are just insane, but it's fun nonetheless. It's a fun, as far as if you can just kind of not let some of the key details strike you, take you out of it. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Like Point Break's not a football movie at all, just because it has, football in the
Johnny
backstory.
Johnny Utah, former 5-star
Yeah.
college quarterback,
Yeah.
turned detective.
Yeah, I have seen The Replacements. That's okay.
Yeah, it was all
It's
right on that
it's
one.
a little bit, it's not really trying to do too much. It's
No,
just mhm,
it knows what it is and staying in
mhm.
that lane.
All right. Well, thank you, Upo. That's certainly an idea. There's certainly going to be plenty of time this off season.
That's right. A lot of time to cover some off-season content. So great suggestion.
All right. My next fifth round guy is the Mississippi State Bulldog here, Nathaniel Watson, 24, 6'2", 233, so about average size for a modern linebacker. Did good 40 at the combine, but had miserable jumps. He's got no hops. 2 years of really good production for Mississippi State, though. Ton of plays made in the backfield. He lives in the backfield.
Mm.
So, do you think this is going to work in the NFL?
Yeah, one guy that I'm sorry I missed on my list for fourth rounders. I actually had him as my highest graded fourth rounder. So sorry I missed that when we were going through the list. But I actually like this guy quite a bit. A guy that the Seahawks have met with too, Brendan. I don't know if that's one of their top 30 visits, but they have met with him. Just a workhorse Mike that can pursue like a demon. Back-to-back seasons with over 100 tackles in the SEC, 137 this year alone. 21 sacks over the past 3 years, including 10 this last year. So we see a guy that's getting better and better and better at his best this last year. He's got legit size weight combo. I think that's becoming increasingly hard to find. A guy I think that tried to lighten down to get his 40 time down to the place that he wanted to get it to, where he probably played a little bit higher than that, Brendan, more in that 240 range. He's got some nice bounce for Mike. It can look quick when bouncing back and forth laterally or backpedaling into coverage. I think he is quicker than fast, as symbolized by that 10-yard split to the 40 time. But he can get on top of you quickly and is especially helpful in those times when he's working a spy capacity. I thought he was very similar with Edgerrin Cooper in that they're being two of the top guys in this class at being in the spy role, being able to take out that mobile quarterback who's going to try to use his legs over the course of the game, because they can get there with their quickness and with him instincts too. Sharp as a blitzer. He has the timing. Just understands when to set the stage for attack, when he's got to go, when he's got to give it a second to let the pass protection set, then when he can click in and go. He just has a natural feel for it. He's able to bounce off the pass pro blocks in short spaces, and that burst comes back into play, where that's a lot of his sacks come off that, where I get off the block, then back right on top of the quarterback quick. He can't scramble away from me. It's for me, it's where you get him in coverage where I think he's at his weakest, Brendan. He'll get good depth, but he sometimes just doesn't pick anybody up. His awareness and instincts in coverage is just sometimes just not there. It's blatantly bad at times, quite honestly. And I don't know. It's weirdly so. It's not like he's getting fooled. It's a little bit like we talked about one other middle linebacker where it's like you're not picking up an assignment. You're just sort of dropping. And it's not spiral. It's that old Jordyn Brooks thing that they try to tell us, like you're dropping and you're not picking anything up. It isn't spy. You're just sort of just dropping. But what I liked in him. I think it's a little bit of a struggle to get off second level blocks as well. So those are kind of the two detriments in his game, coverage and getting off a little bit of blocks, but everything else was pretty good. I felt like down the line with him, and there is really truly upside to him, I think, as a blitzer and a guy that could be a bit of a tackling machine for you in the defense.
Yes. I agree with a good chunk of that. I do think he's a little bit passive at times in getting to the ball carrier, which is weird to say when he has all these tackles, but I think there's this one statistical oddity with him where he had 137 tackles last year and over 100 of them were assisted and only like 30 of them were solo. So he's getting to the ball carrier, but he's usually getting there with the pile, right? There's a lot of pile jumping. So I think the tackle numbers is a little bit inflated over his actual level of impact. His change of direction speed, I think, is a little bit slow. Poor coverage abilities, but his tackle fundamentals are strong. Fantastic blitzer, good instincts and technique against the run overall. So I don't think he'll be. I'm a little bit worried about what he's going to do on third down. Is he just going to blitz all the time like we were trying to do with Jordyn Brooks because he can't cover? But I did end up putting him down in the 5th round. I would be down with a 5th round pick on him, I think.
Yeah, I might say I think I'd like him maybe a little bit better in a different scheme than ours. To your point, I don't think he'd necessarily be. Even though we've met with him, I still don't think the fit to the scheme's necessarily good. What I liked about him in the 4th round is I think you get a guy with the warts and all who gives you the cheap rookie contract on a 4th round contract who ends up starting for you for a couple of years, and you're able to keep that position really light because I think he's ready to go. I don't think he's going to need a lot of time. What he is what he is, and your points about the things that are a little bit missing in a game are valid. But the good things are there too. It's just you're getting kind of the finished product. The floor will be what it is, and the ceiling will be limited, I think, as well in what it is. But you can use that guy on a rookie deal, cheap contract, and find a role for him, I feel like.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that. Certainly some value here. My next 5th round guy, I think this is another top 30 visit guy. If not, I know we met him at the combine. It was one of the two. Tyrese Knight, UTEP, the Miners. Tyrese Knight had a nice combine overall. Change of directions a little bit questionable, but good testing. Lived in the backfield last year. Made more than 1 tackle for loss per game. 7 passes defensed. So really nice productive season. Starting to make some waves on big board. CBS has him in the top 100. Now, I don't agree with that, but he's pretty interesting here. What do you think of Tyrese Knight?
There's limited tape on this one, Brendan, because it's UTEP. So I wasn't able to trace a lot on Tyrese for some of the other players we've talked about. Another guy that I think comes in at 235 listed weight of the combine and absolutely gained weight to get there because he's much lighter on tape from what I saw from him. The tape I did see with him, I wasn't overly impressed with him. I think it's a big time struggle to get off blocks, mainly for reasons that I just mentioned, that he's so undersized and how he feels when he's taking on those blocks. He has no plan to get off of them. He has no hand usage that he can do to get off of him. Gets blocked by a second level climber. He's done. I don't think he is as quick or fast as he was tested either. I think that there's, especially when you base it into his awareness and instincts and how he's kind of sometimes a little bit slow to react to things. It's just not there. It's not there. The awareness felt slow. The instincts are off. I didn't have a lot of tape to go on with him, Brendan, so I'm not going to hardline this opinion and say that I just don't want, but I do, based off of what I saw, there's a little athletic profile there and little else.
I can agree with most of that. Obviously, he does have some production on the field, but I like the athleticism. I think he's pretty good in zone coverage. I think he's also a decent tackler. But he overall, is mostly just straight line speed. I don't think he has great overall like reactive athleticism. His change of direction skills aren't really there. Man coverage is a struggle. So I think he'll be like maybe an early down defender because he's good against the run. But I also think he's going to get tricked a lot by savvier offensive minds. I think he's somebody who will be put out of position at times. So I put him in the 5th round.
Yeah, I'd go late 5th, early 6th for me with Tyrese. It does get hard with the lack of tape for sure on this one. Because I would like to see another couple of games. The game I saw with him was just, it's like just a couple of plays were really bad plays with him too, in regards to just, not in the spot to make the play on the running back, for instance, and then the running back's upfield, and then he's in a position to take the secondary route to get back in and stop him from housing it. Dives at his ankles, misses the tackle. The running back houses it. There was just some stuff. The tape I was watching with him, I was like, yeah, just didn't. But he is athletic. I will give him that.
More straight line athletic though than reactive,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, he's not a bounce. And again, it gets limited because his feel for how to play is reduces all that. It's that old thing we talk about with we were talking a couple of years ago, like Cody Barton or whatever. Well, he's faster than Bobby's. Like, yeah, but he's a step slow to feel things and react to things, where Bobby's a step fast, so Bobby's still faster. It's a bit of that same thing where you can be quick and all that, but if you're kind of slow in your processing, then it gets neutralized or hampered.
Right, that was actually the end of my 5th round, I think. Did you have anybody else?
2 guys I had in my 5th round left. One kid out of Florida State named Tatum Bethune.
I think I did not get this one.
Okay.
So this is all you.
Middle linebacker with kind of a running back size profile, 5'11 and a half, 229, over 32-inch long arms. Good burst, change of direction, smoothly athletic. He offers a complete package of abilities. So he's just gives you everything a little bit good on, I would say. He drops into space well, gets into great depth. There's not much of a feel as far as zone dropper, but he gets to the spots at least, so he can hit his landmarks. He almost plays zone defense a little bit like man defense at times, and he does find an effective way of playing that, but it did make it a little bit unusual with me where, he'll take on a guy and leave a zone. If there's flood zone concepts coming, you can go after him. So there's a little bit of a mixed bag with him in coverage, but overall just solid. I thought he had very good awareness in space overall outside of those moments there in coverage and reactions within the play. He sees things unfolding really fast, and then along with his quickness usually gets him to the play. He is giving up quite a bit of weight at times in some of these. He's 229, 5'11. So some of that comes into play where you're just going to have those moments where there's like Trotter or some of these other really small middle linebackers. You're just going to get taken. It's a little bit too much all or nothing for me with him as a tackler, Brendan. There's a lot of misses with him. Maybe it comes back to that size thing. He does have pretty long arms, but he's either going to get you to the ground and stop you in your tracks, or he's going to get a whiff. There's really very little in between at times with him. Occasionally he was lined up as a wide 9 coming off the edge. He was able to do it, but I don't think you're going to be able to have him do that very much at the NFL level. At the end of the day, he's got size limitation problems with him, but as a guy that may have a little bit of will upside to him where, he's not that far off size wise than a guy like a Patrick Queen. I like that part of him there with the 5th round at that point.
Okay. And you said you had one more, I think?
Steele Chambers.
Yes, I did have Steele here. All
the man with the horn name.
Great name, honestly.
Great name. It's a good football name.
Mm-hmm. Let me see here. I did have him looked at. Let me make sure I pull him up here. So the combine was mixed, which is kind of okay overall. 6'1", 226. So he is small, short-armed as well. But he's been decently productive for Ohio State the last 2 years. So what did you think about Steele?
I saw him as a coverage linebacker with big-time issues when it came to defending the run. He drops great into coverage, a good feel in his zone drops. He picks up his receivers moving in and out of his zone fluidly. You can also trust him in man coverage situations, Brendan. There's just a natural feel for how to body guys up without being a PI machine, which is, again, a trait that's very important in this modern age for these linebackers, even if it's in kind of a sub role. He has been recently converted from running back to linebacker, and I think this especially shows in his lack of ability to play the run. the run game instincts, the ability to get off blocks, recognizing where the run game is going. It's just all troublesome with him. It's not an effort problem. It's just he's trying his best, but it's a lack of, legit weight, strength, and short arms, and all that shows up on tape along with those instincts. So I just don't want to undersell the struggles there with the run game because it's going to be a problem and you're going to have to fix it. The one outlier to him playing the run is that he is very good on outside zone pitch plays. When he's got to get lateral and show off some of the side-to-line to sideline ability he can bring, it's those sticky A and B gap runs that can kind of trip him up. To me, this is your guy that looks at Jeremiah Owusu-Kamara with the Cleveland Browns when he was coming out as that undersized guy. And you go, that's my model. That's what I'm going to try to be. Because with JOK, he came out as a pure cover guy that was going to be a sub-roll type. And he's grown his game into being a pretty decent run defender where he doesn't have to be taken, at least to the point where he doesn't have to be taken off the field and protected like people thought was going to be the case with JOK when he came out.
Like his instincts. I like the way that he's not afraid to take on blockers and at the very least disrupt the play, even if he's not necessarily going to make the play himself. Works through traffic fairly well. His fundamentals and tackling are good. I'm just worried about the size. I think he gets tricked a lot. I think you can deceive him. His short arms are going to be a bear in the NFL. 30.5. That is Payton Wilson territory. Not good.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm worried about that lack of size superseding everything else, I have to admit.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's a 6th round pick. I think it's worth a 6th round pick. I'm not optimistic on him making it, but he could.
The one thing that drove me up to put him to the 5th round versus the 6th was just, for me, the conversion. The recent conversion of running back to the new position gave me some hope that maybe those run game problems, if he was a guy that had been there for 3 years playing this position, Brendan, and coming out, I'd put him in the same spot you are then at that point. But that did give me a little bit of maybe hope that he can have some upside there, some refinement that can be gained as we go along.
Okay, sounds good to me. Not bad. We're not too far away on him exactly, so I will say that it's pretty close. And that was the end of your 5th round, you said?
I got one more, sorry.
Oh, okay.
The other guy I've got is Florida State kid, Kalen De La Roche.
And this was another one I missed, so you can have this one.
Another small. Do you like your linebackers 210 pounds, Brendan?
I can't say that I do. That's a safety, I think. I'm hearing you say linebacker, but what I'm hearing in my brain is safety. I got to be honest.
5'11 and a half, and I SU not 210 pounds at the combine. So runs a 4.47, goes 1.59, still only jumps 35 inches, Brendan. So not a leaper. So if you ever wanted a wide receiver sized guy playing the will linebacker position, here you go. Yeah, he's an outstanding blitzer. There's things he can do where he moves differently than what you see from normal linebackers for the position. But his pursuit angles are pretty close to broken. He's a beat late in coverage. His pre-snap recognition is off. It's just hard to see such a light linebacker on the surface of it, making it as it is, much less also having the holes in his game that he does, which are substantial and also holes that don't necessarily tend to always get fixed with given prospects.
And I'll again, that's another guy that I might go ahead and take a look at in the time that we have between now and the draft. But yeah, I'm not familiar with him. So 6th round now, trying to find 6th round guys for me. I think we may have already covered most of the ones that I had in your round 4 or round 5. So somebody I have who we haven't talked about, we have, how about Omar Spates of LSU?
That one, I didn't have a chance to take a look at him.
Right. He's a pretty good tackler. He's good in zone coverage. I like the way that he continues to work to involve himself in the play even after he gets blocked. He's got good contact balance so he doesn't fall down. I like the way he maneuvers through traffic. It's all pretty respectable. But he is another one of these overly aggressive guys who's going to overrun the play. He's also small. He's 6 feet flat, 229, 30 and 5/8 inch arms. So he's really pushing it here. His trigger is a little bit slow. He doesn't trigger downhill fast enough. Doesn't have the strength to get off blockers. So he didn't break out in 2023 the way some people were hoping for. There is some promise. I think he's got a decent all-around game. It just, nothing really stands out in a super positive way. So 6th round selection feels about right to me.
Okay. Yeah. Just didn't check him out.
And I have one other 6th round guy, John Trey Hunter of Georgia State.
Javonte Trunter for, okay.
Yeah, did you have a chance at this one? Okay.
I did not.
All right. So really productive last year for Georgia State, actually. 6'2", 236. So he's got legitimate size. He's not just your typical run-of-the-mill small school guy who has no size. Didn't test all that well. Not a particularly stellar athlete or anything like that. But he's got good straight line speed, and he's got good acceleration, good tackle range, sheds blockers effectively. But this is actually a guy who started out on the edge and moved inside, I think, this year. So he's actually new to the position. He's very obviously new to the position. He cerebrally isn't all there yet, doesn't take good angles against the run. His poor zone coverage awareness is noticeable as well. These are things that should get better in the coming years, but it's not a guarantee. So he just doesn't have like that inside linebacker feel yet because he just started. So I like it a little bit. I think that it's a lottery ticket, but it's a lottery ticket I don't think you can mind buying in the 6th round. So I like him.
New positional changes is always a little place I think you can build that in for some of that upside there. It's hard to think a guy's just been in a position for like a year or two and that he's a finished, not just a finished product, but that he doesn't have some things that can still be mightily cleaned up along the way.
Yeah, and I had one other guy, but I didn't have him drafted. I had him as a UDFA, and I only looked at him because he was a little bit of a late riser on the board. It was Jackson Sermon of California.
Okay. Yeah.
Not much to say here. Good tackler. He's good at stacking and shedding. He's a hard hitter, but there's nothing remarkable or standout about him physically. Not always giving full effort. It feels like he's a little lazy out there, and he missed half of the season last year. So priority UDFA for me. Did you have anybody else in your bottom of the draft area?
Last guy I've got in the 7th round is Aaron Casey out of Indiana, 6'1", 231, 4.75 40. Did get the 159 10-yard split, but obviously the speed is a tremendous problem with him. Downhill, somewhat instinctive linebacker, also strong, low wrap-up tackler. He'll bring the occasional hard hit. While he's not fast, he does have the strong quickness for the position. There are issues all over the place, though, in his game. His run defense is the strength of his game, yet he tends to overrun past the point of attack. He's very strong at getting off of blocks. He takes on second level blocks with authority, yet his instincts and awareness can be shoddy. And his method for taking on blocks head on can lead to him getting enveloped when he can't answer the power. He's just lost in coverage. Doesn't know where to sit in zone. His zone drops always feel too deep or too shallow. He's never tracking the player entering his zone. Over 550 snaps in coverage throughout his college career, or last 2 years, 4 pass breakups over that time while being targeted 59 times. Just sometimes feels a little lost on the field for me. Dropped him in the 7th round for that reason. I think his quickness will potentially get him drafted, but then the speed might also not.
Okay. Sounds good to me. So that rounds it out for you?
That rounds it out for me.
All right. I think that's pretty much everybody, and I think that's about as comprehensive a look at the linebacker crop that you're going to get. So I think we did good, and we don't have much left. We only have a little bit left, and then we've done all the homework, right? Now we have to take the test.
That's right. That's right. Now it comes down to the goods. Now it's time to produce.
Okay. So I guess that's going to go ahead and do it for the show. Thank you, Brandon, for doing this with me. I do have one little announcement I want to make before we turn off the stream. Tomorrow, I am planning on doing I don't know if it's going to be a stream or video, but I'm going to be doing a collaboration with Dan Viennes of Seahawks Forever tomorrow afternoon. I know you've actually done a little bit of work with him in the past. And
he'll have you record it and upload it.
Yeah, right. So he reached out to me, and we're going to meet before this draft, and we're going to talk about the draft a little bit. So keep an eye out on that. It'll probably be up on his channel. He runs the Seahawks Forever podcast. Thank you. And yeah. So thank you for doing this with me, Brandon.
Yeah, Dan's a good guy. He's good to chop it up with. And my pleasure, man. I've loved looking at these prospects, and it just gets me more and more, hopefully what it does with our audience too, more and more excited for this draft and all the potential.
And yeah, we're gonna, a couple days away, right? 2 days. We're gonna do the corners, I think.
We got 2 days. We're coming back with the corners, and we're both about 30, 35 deep on our list. So we're going to have a lot of cornerbacks for you. Get ready. Yeah. You like cornerbacks, you're getting a lot of them.
It's a good class. It's a really good class of corners.
Right behind receivers, probably, is the second
Probably.
strongest position.
So thank you for coming out, everybody. It was a great show. Had a lot of fun. And we're almost there. We're almost there. We are 9 days away, not even 9 days away from the start of the draft. By this time, 9 days from now, we're going to have at least some idea of what's up. We're going to know a little bit more about the plan. We're going to know a little bit more about the process. So you should be excited about that. Whether or not we have a ton of draft capital this year, we don't. I know last year was a lot more fun, but now we have this new coaching staff and we need to figure out how they're going to do this. So see you guys then. See you guys tomorrow. See you guys very soon with Brandon once again on Thursday. And as always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.